5. It held drug dealers who caused a death due to selling a deadly drug to someone responsible for that person's death. It sent a loud message to drug dealers. If you deal and they die, you pay. This law, as successful as it's been, fell short. The law failed to include drug dealers who were under the age of 18. On June 3rd of 2024, Devin Ramos and a friend purchased 2 Percocet pills from a juvenile drug dealer. Well, purchased what they were led to believe were 2 Percocet pills. These pills were laced with fentanyl, a deadly poison. Both children overdosed. Devin's was fatal. All from one decision, one pill. But someone else made a decision too. Someone who knew what was in that pill. Someone who knew the risk and still sold the pills. And yet, under Florida law at the time, because the dealer was 17 years old, he faced no consequences, no responsibility for his actions, no justice for giving Devin a pill that he knew could possibly harm, or even worse, kill him. Think about that. If he had used a gun, a knife, or by any other means to take someone's life, he would have faced murder charges and severe consequences for his actions. But poisoning someone with fentanyl, the law made a distinction, and this dealer, simply because he was a juvenile, could not be held accountable. When I learned of this case, I was absolutely infuriated and at the same time heartbroken. I joined Devin's mother and grandmother at the funeral, and as a father and the sheriff, I felt absolutely helpless. I promised Miss Amita that I would do everything in my power to change the law so no other parent would have to face even more agony, that nothing could be done. I called Senator Danny Burgess and Representative Tracy Coister, leaders who not just talk about change, but make it happen. I explained the gap in the law, the family left behind, and the injustice that persists. Without hesitation, they both said, let's fix this. And we got to work developing the language. Together, law enforcement and legislators crafted House and Senate Bill 612. We spoke to other legislators, testified at committee meetings, and in less than a month, this bill will become a law. Today, we celebrate the victory, not just for law and order, but for every parent who deserves to know that the law won't turn a blind eye to the person who poisoned their child. This change in legislation makes one thing clear. If you knowingly distribute a deadly substance such as fentanyl and someone dies, your age will no longer shield you from the consequences. This is a true example of good government. It started with a tragedy, sparked a conversation, and led to real, meaningful change. A tremendous thank you to Senator Burgess for your leadership and action in sponsoring this bill. And thank you, Representative Coister, for championing this bill and seeing it through to enactment. Both of these legislative leaders who wanted to be here were called to the Capitol this week for budget hearings. I also must take a moment to thank our governor. Thank you, Governor DeSantis, for all of your support of law enforcement, and thank you for signing this bill into law. Although Senator Burgess and Representative Coister are not here today, an ally for law enforcement and someone who is tireless and fearless in her pursuit of justice, our state attorney, Susie Lopez, is joining us today. And someone who has experienced tremendous anguish, sadness, and heartbreak, Devin Ramos's mother, Amy Omida, is also joining us today. Miss Omida, your strength, your voice, and your love for your son helped push this forward. And we are proud to stand with you today. While we could never bring Devin back, drug dealers who think that there's a loophole in facing justice, think again. Part of Devin's legacy will be holding you accountable. I would now like to welcome Miss Omida to the podium.
Hello. God blessed me to be the mother of Devin Ramos for 17 years till his life was cut short on June 3rd, 2024. That day was the worst day of my life. Yesterday, June 3rd, made 1 year since my baby boy went to go be with his Heavenly Father. My son Devin had his whole life ahead of him. Devin was such a talented kid and loved making music and playing basketball and hanging out with his friends. My son has such a huge heart and a kind soul. Devin was always willing to help his friends whenever they needed it. Devin meant the world to me, his brother Nico, his father Sal, and his other 4 siblings and family members. There isn't a day that goes by that I do not think about him and miss him tremendously. Some days this all feels unreal to me. I was very angry, helpless, and confused when I found out that nothing could be done to the individual that supplied the pill, leading to the overdose of my son. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I wanted justice for Devin. Sheriff Chad Chronister attended my son's wake, and he promised me that he would do everything in his power to change this law. And he kept his promise to me and my family. I am so thankful and grateful to Sheriff Chronister and the Sheriff's Office and all their hard work and dedication. You will never understand how much this means to me and my family. I am at peace now that my son's death is not in vain. And because of this new law, other families will get justice now. Minors will face consequences for supplying drugs with intent to harm, and in Devin's case, kill. I pray one day that as a community we come together to make a difference in this fight to get fentanyl out of our neighborhoods and away from our youth. We gotta do better for our community and our children. I don't wanna see another mother ever go through what I went through. Thank you.
Good morning. This new law is about saving lives and holding drug dealers accountable, no matter how old they are. Previously, Florida law didn't allow prosecutors to hold a drug dealer accountable for someone's death unless that person, that defendant, was 18 years of age or older. When the sheriff's office brought Devin's case to my office for consideration to file charges, our hands were tied. The drug dealer in that case was under 18 years of age, which meant that we could not charge him with murder. Thankfully, through our sheriff and our lawmakers, things in Florida have changed. They drew a line in the sand and said, if you put this poison out into our community, you will be held accountable no matter what your age is. This is a case where law enforcement brought an issue to lawmakers in Tallahassee, and they took action. Thank you to Senator Danny Burgess and Representative Tracy Koster for your leadership on this issue. They worked with Sheriff Chronister to solve a problem which will ultimately make our community a safer place. How will this new law help our community? It will act as a deterrent to the young drug dealers who are out there who think that age is a shield. I can't get charged if I'm under the age of 18. That is not the case anymore. We can now charge a juvenile with third-degree murder if they deal drugs that cause a death, just like in Devin's case. That is a second-degree felony punishable by up to 15 years in the Florida State Prison. Before, our hands were tied. Now, as a juvenile, you can be charged as an adult with a second-degree felony. Ultimately, of course, we hope that criminals take note and stop dealing drugs, because no mother should have to go through what Miss Omida has gone through for the past year. But at the very least, we know that this new law means we can hold anyone accountable for peddling this deadly poison, fentanyl specifically, into our community. Criminals, take note. If you're dealing deadly drugs like fentanyl, you won't get a pass in Hillsborough County just because of your age. You make an adult decision and you kill someone, you will face adult consequences. Thank you very much.
At this time, we'll attempt to answer any questions there may be.
I just have a question for Amy, if you don't mind. Did you ever think that, your son's beautiful, it looks like every other teenager did. Did you ever think that your family would go through this? What message do you have for other families that have just been forced?
No, I never thought that I would ever go through this. I seen other families go through this, and I always said that this would never be me, that I would never have to experience this. But I did, and it's real. And what I want to say to other families is, get close to your kids, be nosy, get in their business, make sure they know about God, keep them close to you and keep them away from the streets, and just, have an open communication with your kids. Always have an open communication, because you never know what's going on, or what other people are doing in the streets or giving your kids. So just have an open communication with them.
Just on the prosecution side of this, I know that the judicial system, people might not always understand this when it comes to understanding how things are prosecuted. Obviously, there's been a lot of progress made when it comes to prosecuting adult dealers, now juvenile dealers. Can you just talk about, so people may have a better understanding how difficult it is and historically it's been for you guys to prosecute these cases, and maybe, this is obviously helping.
The legislature gave us this tool of charging someone with first-degree murder for the unlawful distribution of illegal drugs. Fentanyl is really what we're seeing the most in right now. And we are a very lucky community in that our law enforcement partners do excellent investigations. Like I said earlier, our hands were tied in this case based solely on the fact that this defendant was under the age of 18. After July 1st, when this law goes into effect, our hands will no longer be tied. That won't affect Devin's case, of course, but it could affect cases in the future. But our law enforcement partners work very hard to put these cases together to find out who it is that sold or gave that deadly pill or that deadly substance to someone who ultimately died. And so putting these cases together, our law enforcement partners are the heart and soul of that, and they work tirelessly to get justice for families.
Sheriff, we see these kind of events happening so often when the youth, loses their lives. Is there anything the department can do to prevent these things before it happens? Because after it happens, everybody can come with solutions. But
Yeah, great question. And enforcement and arresting somebody, putting together an investigation is one small piece. Education and awareness, prevention, treatment. The sheriff's office is heavily involved in all aspects when it comes to substance abuse, mental health that comes along with substance abuse. So, the arrest is just one small piece of this. You asked a great question about how hard these cases are to prosecute. You have to prove that they knowingly distributed or sold the substance and knew that it was deadly. In this case was a great case. We had all three children together when we did investigation on their cell phones, so we knew where they were together. We had the suspect's car outside the residence. We had text communication back and forth showing that they wanted Percocet pills, showing that they were purchasing 2 Percocet pills, $12 a piece. Nowhere ever did they ever said they wanted fentanyl, that they want something different, that they made it clear what they wanted to purchase. So this case would have been a great case to hold this juvenile offender accountable for taking a life. You can't imagine how frustrating it was to be at that funeral and know that you're helpless. You can't do anything until we did.
Any other questions? Really quickly, thank you all so much for being here and having us, and I'm so sorry for you and your loss and your family. Sheriff, you know, this opioid crisis is something we've been battling as a country, as a state. It doesn't matter where you are. Do you feel like this new legislation is just the first step, or one of the first steps into fully battling this crisis?
Yeah, I think, again, when you talk about a crisis, it has to be multifaceted, and that's how our approach has to be. We have to focus on education and awareness, you know, that prevention piece. We have to focus on substance abuse. 100%, you know, a focus on both of those components. Yes, I think to answer your question, enforcement, here's another enforcement tool. So I think when you talk about a crisis, there's a multifaceted approach. You have to improve your ability in all 3 facets, the treatment of it, the education and awareness, and then the enforcement. And with the governor and legislators giving us this tool, you heard the state attorney mention it, I think it's a deterrent, and it sends a loud and clear message. It's not a secret that a lot of drug dealers will use juveniles because the sanctions and penalties are much less severe, right? We have constitutional requirements and boundaries that we have to operate in. You know, that's why this helps change that. Maybe this will keep one child. If it keeps one child from losing his or her life, we've been successful. So absolutely, I think this is another tool in a toolbox in the fight against the opioid crisis. Thank you.
Ensuring that the message does get to those juveniles, similar to what Amy touched on, talking directly to parents and guardians, what would you say to them about the seriousness of the charges that they could face?
The fact that somebody would sell something knowing that it could harm or worse yet, take their life, should be deterrent enough. But with that being said, I think this law sends a loud and clear message that if you deal and they die, you're going to be held responsible. This is a serious crime with serious consequences. And no one under the age of 18 wants to spend this amount of time in prison. It will change the trajectory of your life forever, just like you changed the person who you poison's life forever. Thank you, everyone. Please have a safe and great day.